Welcome to our Provo Municipal Council meeting, Tuesday, July 26th at 5:35 p.m. Meetings of the Municipal Council are being held in hybrid fashion. That is, members of the public can continue to view council meetings on YouTube and Facebook, or they may attend in person in the council chamber at the Provo City Center. I remind participants to mute your microphone when not speaking. In the chamber here with us today, we have Council Member Bill Fillmore, myself, Travis Hoban, Catrice McKay, Rachel Whipple, and then online we have Council Members Dave Shipley and George Hanley. Thanks for joining us, and we have all of you. We also have Mayor Michelle Kafusi and Wayne Parker, our Chief Administrative Officer, and several awesome staff members from the city and council staff as well. Oh man, Mark, our opening prayer will be by invitation. Today's prayer will be provided by Mark AO from the city, our intern with the city council.
Our loving Father in heaven, we thank you for all the blessings that thou hast given. Thank you for this opportunity to be here in our city's municipal council meeting. Thank you for the opportunity to serve, to be here in this city, to be able to help of our neighbors. We ask you for a special blessing we ask you for thy spirit of unity and peace as we try to counsel together on how to better help Provo City to be a better place for people to live, work, and play. We love thee, Father, and all this we pray in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Fun fact, Mark's a huge NBA fan. You have a good conversation with him about the NBA. The Pledge of Allegiance tonight will be provided by Councilor Fillmore. Let's all join Councilor Fillmore in the pledge.
Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilor Fillmore. Karen, you up for reading our our public comment preamble tonight? Thank you.
Yep. As indicated on the screen, a required public hearing will be held for certain agenda items prior to council action. After each such item has been presented, time to comment will be provided for all those who wish to speak. For items that do not require a public hearing, public comment will still be taken following presentation of the item, but will be limited to 10 minutes. At this time, up to 15 minutes have been set aside for an open public comment period, which is intended to allow comment on matters that do not appear on the agenda. Persons who speak during this time to an item that is on the agenda will not normally be afforded a second opportunity to speak during the comment period specific to that item. During any public comment period, each speaker will generally be limited to 2 minutes. Due to noticing requirements, no formal action will be taken in this meeting on matters that do not appear on the agenda. Those with comments are invited to approach the podium. Those participating on Zoom will need to use the raise hand feature to indicate they wish to comment. The chair may choose to alternate between in-person and online commenters. Please begin your comments by stating your name and city of residence. You will have 2 minutes to speak. To assist the city recorder with the minutes, we ask those commenting in person to print your name on a slip of paper provided at the back of the room. There's also some up here. And place it in the container near the podium. Online commenters should spell out their names before commenting. Public comment is now open.
Can I come up? Sorry, I don't know how this works. First time.
Yeah, just let us know who you
I
are.
mean, last time I was here, I was
Welcome.
like 8 years old, so it's been a while. So I know I was looking at the agenda for the working meeting that was earlier today, and accessory dwelling units was something that was meant I had talked about, I think, or discussed, or someone made a presentation. And I know that's a continual issue in Provo City. I've lived in Provo until I was about 22, moved to Cleveland, Ohio, and now I'm back in last year. And I bought a home that was built in the 70s, that was built with an apartment as well as 6 of the houses around me. But now it's not zoned for apartment use. And so we've been not fighting with the city, been working with the city, trying to come up with a solution. But I'm not here for me. I'm here. All my neighbors had the same issue. And these homes were built. I have a separate driveway, separate entrance. There's not on-street parking, but yet we can't have people live in the apartment. And that's been happening around the older neighborhoods of Provo, where many of the homes have these things. And we keep having these discussions in Provo City. How do we increase, rentals or places for people to live, different social economic classes, things of that nature. And so I don't know what the answer is. And I just had some suggestions of whether it be, can we permit use the whole city? So that way the city then knows who's using it. Because I know a lot of people are hiding it. I was in a caucus meeting and someone said, we have people that get mail at our house. Well, obviously, what are they doing? They're living in their house, but no one wants to bring it up. So why can't we make it more, let's make some rules, and I don't know what these rules are, no on-street parking, you have to have permit parking. You have to have a separate entrance. That way the city, and then it's getting permits, getting money, so they're getting revenue. And then they know exactly where people are living. And I think that could help, because I think a lot of the older homes in Utah have these apartments that have been there for 40, ours has been there since 74, and people have lived in it since 74 until the last year when someone came and was mad at us because we thought it was legal when we bought the house. The realtors now told us $100,000 less value because we can't rent it out. And so we lost value in the home. And so it's just upsetting that we have and neighbors around us in these neighborhoods that have these apartments and we can't rent them out. And we have people who need apartments and places to live, not just in Provo, but all of Utah. But Provo is a big place. People want to live here. It's a great city. I moved back here because I love it here. And so that's just something to think about. Hopefully I know it's going to go on and on. And later on, I know we'll talk about neighborhood chairs. And what's frustrating with that is our neighborhood chair disagrees with everything in our neighborhood, yet he's our neighborhood chair. And so his opinion over trumps us. So just wanted to share that. So, name Jeff Hammond. And I'm from Provo. Thanks.
Hey, Jeff,
Yeah.
which area of the city do you live in?
Neighborhood. So formerly known as Wilsonville, because they were all Wilson homes. If anyone knows the area, maybe Mayor Kafusi knows, but they all have basement apartments, separate entrances and everything. So, but it'd be great. Thanks.
Councilor Ellsworth wanted me to say that she, there was an error in the email that she sent out. The truth and taxation is not tonight, but if you're here for that, you're welcome to come up and comment.
Is it next Tuesday or the following Tuesday? August 2nd at 6 p.m. Thank you. And I apologize for the confusion.
Guess I should put that in my calendar, huh? So if you were here because you were expecting a conversation tonight about truth and taxation, we apologize for the error, but you're welcome to come up and provide a comment if you'd like as well on that. Or you know what, anything else that you'd like to, you got 2 minutes. All right, doesn't appear we have any comments online and looks like nobody's jumping up here. So we'll go ahead and we'll close public comment. Thank you for your comment. Appreciate you participating, coming out. You'll hear more about ADUs later. So our first item tonight is a resolution consenting to the appointment of individuals to various boards and commissions. Presented by Mayor Kafusi.
We're up here every time because we're working really hard to get all these boards and commissions filled.
It's great.
Council Chair Hoban, members of the Municipal Council, I am recommending the following appointments to Provo City boards and commissions as indicated below and submit them herewith for the council's advice and consent. The first one is Arts Council. Tyler Person. Tyler has been a member of BYU's International Folk Dance Ensemble for 4 years and has performed in many musicals and choirs throughout his lifetime. I am recommending Tyler be appointed to a 2-year term on the Arts Council ending June 30th, 2024. And the second is for Planning Commission. It's Jeff Whitlock. Jeff has been a CEO, worked as a management consultant, and served on the Orem Transportation Advisory Commission. I am recommending Jeff be appointed to a 3-year term on the Planning Commission ending June 30th, 2025. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay. Are there any questions or comments? Okay.
I do. So we've recently changed our process so that we no longer meet with these people in our little closed meeting before we vote on them here in this, but we have opportunity to see their names and to ask questions about them. Because we just voted on this changed process. This is our first meeting with the new one where we haven't actually laid our eyes on the people in advance. So if they're here, wave a hand, but they're not required to be here. There we go. Yes. So, hello. Glad that you're here.
All right. I'll just say thank you for being willing to serve this great city. And gosh, I guess we just vote on this, right? Okay, at this time, we'll call for a vote on the implied motion. I'll take a roll call. We'll continue to kind of go in order. Counselor Handley?
Yes.
Counselor Ellsworth?
Yes.
Counselor Fillmore?
Yes.
Counselor Whipple?
Yes.
Counselor Shipley?
Yes.
Counselor McKay?
Yes.
And I will vote yes. It's unanimous. You squeaked by. Next is an ordinance amending the Provo City rate schedules to set electric service rates for Renew Choice shared solar for commercial users. Travis Ball is here with us today. There he is. Wow, he got dressed up for us.
Thank you, Council Chair Hoban, and thank you for the council. I'm here to recommend that the city adopt a rate for shared solar for commercial rates at 0.0576 cents per kilowatt hour. Is there any questions?
All right. Thank you, Travis. Are there any questions for Travis? I know we heard this, last meeting? We'll open this item up for public comment. If anybody'd like to comment on this.
This is just for commercial users.
All right. Doesn't seem to be any comments. We'll go ahead and,
No, I just commented, I think that our director of the power department made a pretty good case for this the last meeting and fully supportive.
Thank you, Counselor Fillmore and Counselor Ellsworth. We'll close public comment and we'll bring it back to discussion if there are any additional comments or questions. If not, we'll go ahead and take a vote. Counselor Ellsworth,
Yes.
Counselor Fillmore,
Yes.
Counselor Whipple,
Yes.
Counselor Shipley,
Yes.
Counselor McKay.
Yes.
I will vote yes. And Counselor Hanley.
Yes.
That's unanimous. Next is a resolution appropriating $19,715,106 in the general fund from federal ARPA funds for a culinary water treatment plant and transferring that amount from the general fund to the water fund. Wayne Parker, our CAO, will be presenting this. Welcome, Wayne.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In our continuing discussion about the use of American Rescue Plan Act funds from the federal government, we briefed council last week on the non-discretionary portion of the ARPA funds, which has some very strong limits and strings attached to these dollars, which have to be used for infrastructure. Generally for water, wastewater, stormwater, or broadband expansion in the community. And after the administration went through its process and shared that information with the council's ARPA committee, the recommendation was to appropriate the remainder of the unallocated ARPA non-discretionary funds to the to the water treatment plant, culinary water treatment plant construction, which has been a high priority for the council as part of our aquifer storage and recovery initiative. If you have specific questions about the project, Dave Decker, our Public Works Director, is in the audience and can respond to specific technical questions. But it's the administration's recommendation that you approve the resolution as it's been prepared for you tonight. Again, happy to answer any questions from my perspective, or we can invite Mr. Decker up as well.
Any questions from the council?
I just indicated for myself, I think the administration's made a strong case for this. These are restricted funds. I think this is the highest, best use. And based on all our prior discussions, information, I move we approve it.
Thank you. I might just mention for the benefit of the general public, the county has also allocated $14 million out of their ARPA allocation for this project, and that, along with state funding and the local side of funding, will get the process well underway and get the treatment plant under construction.
We got a question or comment from Councilor Shipley.
Yeah, I wonder if somebody could speak to how soon the city expects to be able to break ground and start the project.
We'll ask Mr. Decker to come up and talk scheduling with you.
Culinary water treatment plant is under design right now. We anticipate that it would be bid out in the spring of 23, next spring, and take about 2 years for construction.
Thank you.
All right, we'll open up this item for public comment. Anyone is welcome to comment on this item, either in the chamber here or online. All right, doesn't look like anybody's interested, so we'll go ahead and close public comment. We'll bring it back to the council. Any additional questions or comments? One from Councilor Shipley.
Yeah, just wanted to reiterate. I mean, we've seen this a few times before. I've been vocal about my support for a water treatment plant for security purposes, for sustainability purposes. There's just a lot of good that can come from this. And so I'm fully supportive, and I appreciate other committee members' work in soliciting councilors' feedback and for all of you giving feedback on this particular item. But obviously we welcome any additional feedback. I would just say for purposes of the committee and the restricted part of these funds, we're supportive of this part.
Councilor Ellsworth.
Like Dave Shipley, I'm a part of the ARPA committee with the council. And while these are restricted funds, and so there's only so many things we can spend them on, there are still a variety of things that we could spend them on. However, this will allow us to save citizens money by not bonding and not bonding for as much money by allocating these funds towards this project.
All right. Any additional comments? Okay. We'll go ahead and take a vote on the implied motion. Councilor Fillmore.
Yes.
Councilor Whipple.
Yes.
Councilor Shipley.
Yes.
Councilor McKay.
Yes.
I will vote yes. And Councilor Hanley.
Yes.
Councilor Ellsworth.
Yes.
Thought I was gonna forget you, didn't you? Would I do that? No. Next is a resolution approved. Oh, that was unanimous. Thank you. A resolution approving an interlocal agreement for the use of surplus water. Gary Calder, Public Works Water Division Director. Oh, Dave Decker.
I'm substituting for Gary tonight. Thank you, Chair Hoban. We talked about this briefly in the work session, and just for the public that's here tonight, the resolution before the council allows authorization, the mayor to sign an agreement, an interlocal agreement with a agency called New Era. It used to be the South Utah Valley Waste District, and some additional waste agencies have been added to that original agency. And it involves a much larger number of waste agencies at this point. And that agency owns the Bayview landfill, which is located near Goshen, Utah, on the west side of Utah Lake. And for about more than 20 years, the city has allowed South Utah Valley to use a small amount of water. It's 1 CFS, or about 100 acre feet annually for operations at the Bayview landfill. And with the additional agencies that have been added to the landfill, we felt like it was important to document the water usage by the landfill agency, and also what we get back in return. So Provo City in return receives official authorization to use about half of an asphalt pad that is out near the landfill. So that equates to about 2 acres of asphalt pad. And the purpose that we use that for is to place solid waste material from our wastewater treatment plant, especially during the winter time frame, because it cannot be land applied. Just weather permits or does not permit application of that material onto farms that are nearby. And so we temporarily store it there and then apply it in the springtime. So that's the exchange agreement that we get for the water. I'd be happy to answer any other questions that the council might have.
Seems like a pretty good deal. They get some water, take care of our crap for us.
You can say it that way. Yep.
Any questions?
Not a question so much as a comment, in that this is water that I don't like the word surplus for it, because it makes it sound like we've just got lots of extra water that we're giving away for some reason. But this is water that we had already agreed with the landfill that they could use to help maintain the landfill, keep down dust and things like that. So this is an existing agreement because we are continuing to use a portion of this landfill. We're continuing to let them use this small amount of water. And we are simply changing the name of the entity that we're working with because they've changed their entity name. So
that is correct.
Given that we are in a drought period, and we're thinking more carefully about how we use water and conserve it, I felt like that word surplus was a little bit misleading.
Yeah, one other comment on that. It's actually part of the state requirements in order for us to lease or exchange this for some benefit. We have to determine that it is surplus. So that is a technical term, and you're correct. In a drought time, that's probably a word that could be misunderstood.
Thank you.
That's a good point. Any additional questions or comments? We'll go ahead and open up this item for public comment. If anyone would like to make a comment online or in person, now's your chance. All right. Doesn't seem to be any comments, so we'll go ahead and close public comment and bring it back to the council. Any additional discussion? Doesn't appear so. So we'll go ahead and call for a vote on the implied motion. Councilor Whipple?
Yes.
Councilor Shipley?
Yes.
Councilor McKay?
Yes.
I will vote yes. Councilor Hanley?
Yes.
Councilor Ellsworth?
Yes.
Councilor Fillmore?
Yes.
That's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Dave. All right, our next item is a resolution appropriating $16,573.27 in the Economic Development Division in the general fund for a sales tax increment post-performance payment to Days Market. Keith Morey, Development Services Assistant Director, is presenting. Welcome, Keith.
Hello, thanks for having me. We've talked about these a couple of times before. This is a sales tax reimbursement agreement that we entered into with Days Market in 2019. And basically, the agreement at that time was that if they spent $1.4 million on improvements to that strip mall location, that we would share back a portion of the sales tax increase that they receive if their sales tax dollars were to go up based on those improvements, that we would share a portion of that back to them. So we've done that for a couple of years. This is our third year. The amount that we would owe them this year is $16,573. And that's telling from my perspective. And I just hopefully you recognize this. In 2020, our participation with them was $8,700. 2021, it was $11,980. This year it's $16,573. So it shows me that the investment that they made on that facility was worthwhile, and it is returning higher sales for them. And of course, that means higher sales tax dollars for us as well. So that's a good thing. Basically, it means that we've stabilized a business that's valuable in our community, and that's why we do these. So unless you have any questions, I'd ask you to approve that allocation of money to them.
Any questions from the council? All right. Thank you, Keith. We'll go ahead and open this item up for public comment. Doesn't appear to be any public comment. So we'll go ahead and close that. And bring it back for a discussion if there is any. No discussion. Everybody's supportive of Days Market. That's great. We'll do a roll call vote. Counselor Shipley,
Yes.
Counselor McKay.
Yes.
I will vote yes. Counselor Hanley,
Yes.
Counselor Ellsworth,
Yes.
Counselor Fillmore.
Yes.
That's unanimous. Thank you. Oh, Counselor Whipple.
I'd like to vote yes. Thank you.
Somehow I forgot you. Apologize for that.
It happens.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you. All right, our next item is an ordinance amending the zone map classification of approximately 0.44 acres of real property generally located at 1595 West, 600 South from agricultural A11 to family residential, single family residential, one family residential R18 Sunset Neighborhood. Dustin Wright, the planner, will be presenting. Do we usually call it one family? Usually.
One
Single
family or
family?
single family.
Yeah, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so here's the property the applicant has requested this zone change to the residential R18 zone so that they can provide a single family home on this property. A little bit of the background is that it was a parcel of land divided off and with its current size isn't a buildable lot. And so they're trying to remedy that by applying for this rezone to get the property to be able to be built on. And with the size of the property, they'd be able to build one single family home. The general plan for this area, as you can see here, calls for residential and not agricultural. So they would be bringing it into compliance with our general plan map. And it is located across from the elementary school, so we feel a residential use would be appropriate here. The Planning Commission is for a positive recommendation with two conditions. I spoke with you in the work meeting earlier about the development agreement. That was one of those, and that's no longer needed, so we would not recommend that one, but the second one, that a legal lot is established by obtaining a final subdivision plat and is approved by our CRC and is recorded, that condition would be applicable still for if you're recommending or if you're approving this rezone tonight. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Dustin. We did hear this earlier, so we asked some questions then, but any additional questions? All right, we'll open it up for public comment. Comment or questions. Speak up if you're interested in speaking up on this item. Doesn't appear to be any comments. Oh, we got a hand raised. All right, got a bite. 801-373-1192. Go ahead. Share your.
Hello, it's Melanie McCord.
Melanie, it's been a while. I didn't recognize your number.
Did you know that on your YouTube broadcast, there are no directions for how to call into the meeting? Hello?
Okay, so on the YouTube, there are no directions or no instructions on how to call into the meeting.
No. And so I have been trying to locate, how to do that. I had to go back and look through my emails and find the directions on how to do that. But you need to make sure that on all your broadcasts, you have a way for the public to call in, and there are no directions on the YouTube broadcast. I had a question about the solid waste in Goshen. At one time, there were questions about what kind.
Melanie, we can't hear you. Melanie, if you can hear us, go ahead and call back in, I guess. Hang up and call back in. Can't hear you. Okay, any additional public comment? She'll probably be back. We'll give her time if she comes back on. Okay, we'll go ahead and close public comment and bring it back to the council for any discussion. Okay, we'll go ahead and take a roll call vote. I will vote yes. Counselor Handley?
Yes.
Counselor Ellsworth?
Yes.
Counselor Fillmore?
Yes.
Counselor Whipple?
Yes.
Counselor Shipley?
Yes.
Counselor McKay?
Yes.
Great. Melanie, if you can hear us, go ahead and I'd hang up and call back in because it's for some reason we can't hear you. All right, our next item is an ordinance amending the zone map classification of approximately 32.6 acres of real property located at 3701 West Center Street from agricultural A110 to airport industrial AI, and authorizing a related development agreement. This is also presented by Dustin Wright.
Thank you. Yeah, this item out by the Provo Airport, the applicant is requesting this change of the zone to the airport industrial, which is a new zone that the city has adopted last year for property around the Provo City Airport. So this zone, this location would be applicable and appropriate for this zone, as well as with the general plan in the area calls for airport compatible in this airport overlay zone, which we've created. So the land use would be appropriate. This site would be built out by the applicant at a future date. So their concept plan has gone to the Planning Commission and received approval with that. With the recommendation from the Planning Commission is that there's a development agreement. The development agreement for this one essentially would be to mitigate some of the unknowns at this point that Public Works has as far as what the future tenants would impacts that they'd have with this site. So the development agreement covers those, and as far as dedicating street right-of-ways, street improvements, new and upsized utilities, that's what's in the development agreement for this. And that would be what they're requesting at this time. Staff and the Planning Commission recommended approval to the Municipal Council. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have for this one.
Thank you, Dustin. I guess for information's sake, so we did discuss the concerns that were raised about the traffic that this would generate on Center Street and what legal options we would have to try to reroute that traffic. And we can't just legislate that, but well, we could, but as our council attorney, Brian Jones, put it, you're using a sledgehammer basically to do that. And basically, it would impact other forms of transit on the street as well. So the options we have are a development agreement, which are no longer, which legally are not effective once. They're no.
They usually the agreement usually terminates once the certificate of occupancy is
Certificate of occupancy, right? It's a development agreement. It's not a, so long story short, we're limited on what we can actually do long-term to kind of reroute this traffic, except to work with the tenants to possibly put up signage and communicate to truck drivers to take a different route, et cetera. So we had gotten some feedback on that and wanted to kind of let people know that we're cognizant of that, and we're going to figure out how to work with future tenants to reroute traffic to Lakeview, down to Lakeview as much as possible. Any additional questions for Dustin? Bill?
Not so much for Dustin, perhaps. Maybe you have an answer, but I see Rob Hunter here from Public Works. I'm curious about if you could just maybe give us some sense of long-term plans for widening of West Center Street to accommodate traffic in that area.
Sure. Thank you. Once again, Rob Hunter, transportation engineer. So one of the things, and I know this isn't exactly what you asked, and I will fully answer your question. One of the things that I think is important to point out is that we are right now in the middle of constructing Lakeview Parkway. We are continuing to extend it out to the north end of town, and Orem has funding through MAG to fund their portion to bring it up to tying to Geneva Road, which will be, so Geneva Road up to that point, right about where they're building the new temple, will be a 5-lane. It'll turn into Lakeview Parkway. So Lakeview Parkway will be the natural flow. At least that's what their concept plan shows. And then you'll tee off and you have to, get off of the natural flow to get back onto Geneva Road. So Lakeview Parkway is going to be, I believe, the easier route for people to get in and out of this area, truck traffic to get in and out of this area once it's completed. Their funding is slated for 25-26. So we're working. That's one of the reasons why we're pushing the Lakeview Parkway out here, is to make sure that as things continue to develop on the west side of town, and especially this airport compatible area, that we're giving them options that are better than going through a street that has homes facing it on both sides. But in our transportation master plan, it is shown, Center Street is shown to be, it has been shown to be for a long time an arterial route. Our transportation master plan would, the general assumption on that is that in the future it'll only need to be a 5-lane section. So right now, we don't have the right of way to do that immediately. It would have to be a long-term plan. It's not on our 5-year plan. But it is something that needs to be addressed in the future. Right now, we're looking for alternative routes to where it's easier to use something other than Center Street.
So there is a long-term plan to convert it to a major arterial. 5 lanes, did you say?
Yeah.
How far out would that extend in terms of your hopes?
In terms of timing?
How far west?
How far west? So that's up to Lakeview Parkway. So it tie from Lakeview Parkway over to I-15 as a
not beyond.
Not beyond. Beyond that, it would be it just won't have the same amount of traffic once everything develops out. And again, to stress, that's why it's not on our immediate term, is that we kind of need to see, especially with how Lakeview Parkway develops, we need to see how traffic responds. There's only so much that we can do based off of assumptions. We don't want to turn Center Street into a 5-lane road based off of assumptions of what's going to happen in the future. we kind of need to see what's going to happen. But at least in terms of the long-term plan right now, it's assumed that it would be an arterial, a 5-lane road up to Lakeview Parkway, and then west of there, it would be a collector road, which is typically a 3-lane section.
Okay. So that's really not on the table in terms of current funding or applications for grant money or anything like that.
There are a few grant programs that are still coming out. We know some of them. We don't know all of them. They're coming out, and there's quick turnarounds in terms of doing that. That has not been the emphasis of the ones that have come out so far, is adding vehicular capacity. It has been safety improvements or rebuilding existing crossings of transportation barriers has been the focus of what they have come out with so far.
Given the fact that the FAA is wholly supportive of us creating this regional airport here in Provo, is there a chance that that might encourage federal money for widening the road?
It could. I think right now with us expanding, so right now we've built maybe half of Lakeview Parkway to what it's going to be in the future. It's going to be that big 5-lane section, limited access. There's not going to be a lot of driveways coming off from there, and not a lot of streets coming off from there. Also, it's our a long block system. So on average, I would say it's probably 1,000 to 1,500 feet. Every street connection. So this is intended to carry cars and be the major traffic thing, so that it doesn't happen. Where kids are trying to cross for school or where people are trying to pull out of driveways. And so right now, our emphasis is on providing that and with it connecting up to at least close to the University Parkway exit all the way down to our Lakeview Parkway, University Avenue interchange on I-15. It's going to be the easiest route in and out of here once it's complete.
Okay.
So there may be some future potential with the FAA, but right now our focus is making Lakeview Parkway what it needs to be.
Okay, thanks, Rob.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you, Councilor Fillmore. Additional comments or questions from the council? Okay, we'll go ahead and open this item up for public comment. Neighborhood Chair. This is your neighborhood, right? Bordering, okay. Well, good enough, close enough.
Jonathan Hill, Neighborhood Chair, Fort Utah Neighborhood. So our neighborhood's right across. It's always been tradition when it borders another neighborhood, we participate in the process. And I don't see Provo Bay here, so I'll go ahead and speak on behalf of the neighborhood. First of all, I'm very grateful to the councilors for addressing the concerns about traffic on Center Street. As I mentioned in an email that I sent to all of you, that was the only concern that was raised at the meeting. I think there is general acceptance in the neighborhood that when you're that close to an airport, what can you build, right? It's going to be this kind of development that's going to be in the area. There were no concerns about what it would look like or impacts in that way. But Center Street is a unique case. I think Rob Hunter highlighted it well, where he said that it's not the ideal route to take a lot of cars. Even though it has been labeled as a major arterial for some time, that is not what the cross-section looks like. It is a 2-lane residential road with driveways on both sides. In talking with Public Works, it can be restriped and you can take off-street parking to make it a 3-lane road, which buys you a little bit of traffic load. That in itself has some issues because there's no parking strips along Center Street as well. The sidewalk is right at the curb. And so you put moving traffic very, very close to pedestrian traffic, and that discourages walkability within the neighborhood, especially with our children who cross Center Street in order to get to Amelia in this area. So in the long-term plan, there is a plan to move it to a 5-lane road. I would love to see an estimate of the cost of that because that's going to be a lot of eminent domain. That's going to affect many residences along there. I personally think the better option for the city here is to try to get as much traffic as possible on Lakeview Parkway and mitigate the traffic use here. Now in my email, I suggested, and it looks like you guys considered the idea of, requiring trucks to take Lakeview Parkway. So it sounds like that would be difficult to do. And I wonder if there are other kind of things that we could do that wouldn't be an ordinance, it wouldn't be enforceable, but may help direct a lot of traffic. For example, I mentioned before the meeting to Bill Pepperoni, what if we just put a big sign on the corner of Center Street, Lakeview Parkway that said trucks use Lakeview Parkway to access I-15 and had arrows pointing each way, right? Big black and white sign. I bet you 80-90% of the trucks would then take Lakeview Parkway to access I-15. The occasional truck will come down at Center Street, but that's okay, right? We would greatly mitigate the problems there. I would also love to see looks into, mitigating the dangers of Center Street as it stands to make it a calmer, slower type road. That may also drive people to take another way if it feels like a tight road that you have to go slow on, things like that. So I hope that we can look forward and, I don't think this needs to stop this development, but looking forward, I think we have an opportunity here to, in an efficient way, make sure that we're using the resources, the infrastructure that we have in the best way possible, and the most, cost-effective way possible to make the neighborhood livable, to push people onto Lakeview Parkway and other areas, and look at those solutions. So if you guys have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them. Questions?
Thank you, Jonathan. We did discuss, doing things like that. So we'll definitely pursue that for sure.
Okay, thanks.
I think we're in agreement there.
Okay, sweet.
Thank you. I always appreciate your service. Dustin, did David happen to mention anything about traffic load on Center Street in general, or we had talked in the work meeting about maybe asking him his thoughts on that?
Yeah, I talked to David, and I think he sent Rob here to help answer any additional questions that pertain to traffic or engineering. So if you have something you want to ask him, I think he'd be able to answer better.
Well,
than I would.
yeah, I mean, just in general. So one thing Jonathan mentioned was that there's a certain load of traffic that Center Street is like, capacity that Center Street is capable of handling according to studies or something like that, and that it's close to capacity. And it sounds like long-term, there's a plan to widen it and add capacity. But in the interim, were there any concerns specifically with this development maxing that out or taking it too far?
Not on my side. So there is going to be an increase on Center Street, especially in the interim until we get Lakeview Parkway finished. And so I don't want to downplay that, but I don't. So the capacities that we have in the transportation master plan are from a livability standpoint that included input, and so they are important factors for us to consider of safety and the conflict points of driveways coming in and out. It's not necessarily that you can't fit any more cars on there. This is what, based off of a committee that was put together before my time. I don't remember how long ago, maybe Wayne may know, but I've been here for 5 years. It was before my time, had input. And so they are, like I said, are important factors, but it's not an absolute capacity thing. Based off of
it doesn't shut down when you get like one car more than you're supposed to.
It doesn't shut down. But the other important, because like I said, those are important factors for us to consider. But west of Geneva Road, we've done, as anticipating this was coming in, we wanted to kind of do our own checks and see what the volumes were like, redo counts on Center Street. So we did one probably 500 or so feet from west of Geneva Road. We did one maybe 3/4 of the way between Geneva Road and Lakeshore, and then we did one between Lakeshore and Lakeview. And we got anywhere from on that eastern end after you pass Geneva. It's higher before then. I'd have to get with UDOT and see what their counts are on their section of road. But west of Geneva, it was a little over 8,000 cars per day. As you move further west, it dropped down to 5,000, then actually below 3,000 by the time you got to Lakeview Parkway. And so we've got some capacity before it would hit those those thresholds. Now we may need to look even in the near term future at restriping to 3 lanes, as Jonathan brought up. The major impact that would have is we don't have enough room to leave parking on the street. So we haven't done that at this point. But we continue. We have our counters out there. We can continue to track. That's where I say our focus right now is completing a different and better route. But we'll continue to track and adjust as we move forward.
Thanks. Okay. Any additional public comment? Melanie, you're back. You want to unmute yourself, Melanie?
Hello, yes, I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yes. Welcome back.
Hello, thank you. If you know that at some point Center Street is going to have to be widened and improved, why not take this project as an opportunity to do that? Other developments in the past have been required to improve streets outside of their development. In other words, not just the frontage, but necessary road improvements to serve their development. The development agreement already says that this developer, Dakota Pacific, is going to enter into a reimbursement agreement with the city. Why don't they be required to improve and widen and put in the necessary improvements from their development down to Lakeview Parkway? And then after that, the city has all kinds of, I remember when Dave Graves was in engineering, he regularly would put developers into an agreement that said when and if, then you will have to help participate, which means that those property owners who are on both sides of Center Street from this development down to Lakeview Parkway, when and if they develop, they have to reimburse the city or the developer. I had to do that when I did my development and had adjacent developers reimburse me because I put in that road. I think this is an opportunity to do something on Center Street. Dakota Pacific certainly can afford this. I spent some time this week researching who they are and what kind of developments they build, and they can certainly afford to acquire and build and then dedicate the Center Street from their development down to Lakeview Parkway so that truck traffic is being, if it has to go for those 2 blocks on Center Street, then it's at least on an adequate road. And the second thing is that you need to put something that's more than just a suggestion to the developer that he recommend to truckers that they use Lakeview Parkway. There needs to be something else to ask for a developer to act in a way that's not in his best interest and in favor of the city. That needs to be documented. That needs to be codified. You need to put something in the development agreement that says, yes, the trucks from this will use, and then you need to figure out some way to make that stick. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Melanie. Additional comments? Hi, Becky.
Hi, Travis. Speaking to the mic and state my name. Becky Bogdan, Provo resident. I think that's all I need, right? I agree with Jonathan. Center Street does have the school crossing for Amelia Earhart, which a lot of the kiddos from over there go there. I've also seen kiddos cross from Sunset right there at 1600 West, across from Center Street for some of those over there. My dad growing up, he owned one of those transportation companies. And so, you can't stop on a dime, especially for a little kid. It's harder to stop than it is for a car. And they're pretty heavy. We all know that diesel trucks and whether they have a reefer, whether they have a van trailer or a flatbed or whatever, it's a lot of force that's coming forward. We do have some very good roads that are the Lakeview Parkway that, we probably do need to guide some truck drivers. We've had them go to places out east via Las Vegas. So signage is probably really good for truck drivers to understand where to go and what routes to take. But to have a truck route established for the Lakeview Parkway, I think is very appropriate and very acceptable and will very much help with the safety of the residents in the area. Thanks.
Thank you. Additional comments? Welcome.
Hello, Lindy Deller with Panatoni Development for the record. I am the applicant for this, and I just wanted to address some of the concerns related to traffic. As the developer, I know you had mentioned working with the tenants, which is great. But as the developer on the front end, we can certainly add signage on the project itself. Once you get further closer to the Lakeview Parkway and Center Street intersection, not sure we can handle that, but we're more than happy to accommodate some signage on the site where the trucks would be exiting.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah. And then just to address I think it's Melanie on the phone, the impact fees that we will be paying for this project will go towards the improvements on Center Street as well.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Before you step away, has that been quantified?
I don't believe so. Not yet. I don't think so.
We're just at the zone change stage. The impact fees are assessed at building permit because they're very specific to square footages and acreages and those types of things. But they are substantial. For this type of development, they will be large.
So in response to Melanie's comment previously, some of that be dedicated potentially to improving West Center Street, or?
Well, it depends on the capital improvement plan of Public Works, because those impact fees fund those improvements that are on the capital improvement plan. Mr. Jones is the attorney. I'm not, but I would be a little bit reticent about the legality of requiring this developer to what essentially amounts to a system improvement. Center Street's an arterial class road. Improving that is a system that benefits many, many property owners. To tell one property owner to do something off of their site isn't as easy to do legally as may have been characterized. There are Supreme Court rules that limit how much local government can do there.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome to come up to the mic. He can make his public comment.
I've been in the construction, Troy Jensen, local resident, 46 years. I've been in the construction industry my entire life. I do happen to know for a fact, and I can show you evidence, if it's a concern for any of the, and I'm not speaking to be cheeky or anything, but Provo does have some of the highest impact fees in the entire state. The city is being well taken care of. And that should go to the city and the residents as warm, fuzzy feelings, I guess. I don't know. It's just something, it's just a fun fact.
All right. Thank you, Troy. Yeah, Bill, if you could just work with the developer anywhere that they can put signage to help, mitigate traffic on the Center Street, that'd be great. Counselor Ellsworth? Well, okay. We'll close public comment. I think we're done. Okay. And then we'll bring it back to the council for discussion. Go ahead, Counselor Ellsworth.
I just wanted to say I'm excited about this project. I'm very supportive of economic development. I want to be business friendly. Without a transportation analysis, I think it's hard to say how much the roads will be impacted and exactly which roads and what times of day. But I think we should be fair to all residents and all streets and all homes and all neighborhoods. So by planning for and building out a robust transportation system in that area, it will take pressure off of all roads because there's more connectivity. And so just pushing the traffic to Lakeview Parkway isn't a foolproof idea in and of itself, because there are people who live on Lakeview Parkway. There's hundreds of units being built on the southern part of Lakeview Parkway. And so I just want us to be cognizant of the whole area, so that folks understand that there's other streets and other residents that are being impacted.
Thank you. Additional comments? Yeah, I also think it's great to have for our economic development, for us to focus on continuing to bring more business to Provo. So we'll go ahead and close the discussion, and we will call for a vote on the implied motion. Counselor Hanley.
Yes.
Counselor Ellsworth.
Yes.
Counselor Fillmore.
Yes.
Counselor Whipple.
Yes.
Counselor Shipley.
Yes.
Counselor McKay.
Yes.
And I will vote yes. Unanimous. This is our last item on the agenda. Now, there are a few more new faces here. There was an error in the notice in an announcement that somebody put out about truth and taxation being tonight. It's not tonight. But if you did come for that and you wanted to make a comment on that, feel free to let us know. Our last item is a discussion on the Neighborhood Program Review Committee regarding the committee's recommendations for the neighborhood program. We'll have Karen Tapahe will share some of the public feedback we had. We won't cover, well, Karen, actually, this is our first hearing on this. So we probably should cover the program, proposed, the most recent draft of the program, and also some of the feedback we received. If you're ready for that.
I was going to talk to you about that, but your last meeting round.
Well, I saw you had this, you had some of the slides in there.
Oh, yeah. We're good.
Okay.
Anyway.
So this
takes
is
a second. Our internet right here is slowing down as we speed it up in the building next door. So,
so
have patience. Yeah.
This is the first hearing of this, and we'll have another hearing at the next meeting. So we won't be voting on this tonight. This is just an opportunity to provide public feedback.
Here we go. Okay, and we presented this a couple weeks ago, just some of the basics. The neighborhood program here in Provo has been around for about 50 years. It started with 19 neighborhoods and has grown to 34. Originally, neighborhood chairs were appointed by the mayor. Over the years, the program has been under the direction of the Planning Commission, the City Commission, the mayor, and now the Municipal Council. In 1996, the matching grant fund program was added, and the focus of the program over the history has ranged from things like beautification of neighborhoods to various service projects to input on land use applications and various city issues. Now it doesn't want to go there. Some of the challenges that we've run into, and for those of you who don't know me, my name is Karen Tapahe. I work in the City Council office, and I coordinate the neighborhood program for the council. 34 different neighborhoods means there can be 34 different styles, and each neighborhood has its own personality, and that can change with each chair even, but definitely you get to know the different corners of our city. Meeting locations and meeting access have been somewhat challenging. The pandemic was extremely challenging, but as things have changed and we may not be able to use schools or we have to pay additional amounts, the kinds of locations that we have provided a challenge, as well as meeting access for some people who work different hours or can't get away from the house and want to participate at least in some way. Coordination between developers and neighborhood chairs. This comes up because in the city code, we have a requirement for things like zone changes to have a neighborhood meeting. And that means the developer has to get a hold of the neighborhood chair. And if you're in the middle of the summer or somebody's on vacation, that can be a little difficult. And then you coordinate getting that meeting put together, and that can be a little difficult. We've had neighborhood chairs that use their title to get information, to push a little harder. And when they ask for action or information from the city, it's just handled a little differently than if they did it as just average citizen. Meeting reports and representation of residents' views. Some people are great about detailing. We had 20 people and 5 said this and 10 said that, but there are others that struggle a little more with how to represent what the residents feel. Elections, I've conducted a variety of elections. We've had ones with a lot of people and a lot of division even, but we've also have ones where only 1 or 2 people are there. So it's quite the variety there, and we're not running them like you do running for council. And we don't have a code of conduct. This is a council program, but no way for the council to remove a chair should they murder someone at the, worst case scenario. There's nothing in the code that gives that option to remove someone in that instance. And so we've had a committee that the council put together that's been meeting for the past year, reviewing the neighborhood program, talking to neighborhood chairs, past and present, maybe even future, and then talking to people around the country involved in neighborhood programs, as well as some locally, some organizations that work with our neighborhoods, and city staff that often work with neighborhoods were consulted as well. They have worked on putting together a proposal, and this was the proposal that came forward 2 weeks ago, and we're looking at various tweaks to it to get it ready for a vote, hopefully at the August 9th meeting. So the 3 areas that we focused on: community building with the matching grants, coming together as a community, and then working with Provo City to address neighborhood concerns. So definitely coming together, consistent engagement, having a regular, predictable schedule for our meetings. We'd like to do that at the new city hall because we'd have the capability to have Zoom incorporated, so people would be able to participate whether they're at home taking care of family, or they could watch it later as a recording, or they can be there in person. And then a more streamlined process. I mentioned developers putting in a land use application. We could put that immediately on an agenda, have it scheduled. We don't have to have a bunch of back and forth emails and phone calls. We don't miss that item. It gets to the neighborhood. And then we would treat it much like we do with our public meetings here. We put out public notices. There'll be minutes so that you could read that later and find out what happened. And then get regular updates on information from Provo City. And so this is the visual of that. The neighborhoods would continue as those individual neighborhoods. That part doesn't go away. We still have 34, but they would be grouped into 5 districts of about 6 to 8 neighborhoods each. Each of those districts would have a neighborhood or a executive board made up of up to 11 members, and they would be appointed by the council. And then when the neighborhood district meets, they would have that opportunity to choose who is the chair, vice chair, and secretary moving forward. And like I said, set time, place, all that kind of stuff. And same purpose, essentially, to get information going back and forth between residents and the city. So actually, Malia, can you put up the one I did earlier today with those specific items? Because we received a lot of feedback, and that's been great for for making some of the changes that have already gone forward. So public input on applications, that would be different than other boards and commissions, but giving you the chance to say, oh, that person, you know, does this and we're concerned, or this person is awesome. We really want you to appoint that person. And encouraging neighborhoods to put forward candidates. There's nothing that says you can't get together and say, and encourage your favorite neighbor to represent you in some way. And that's often the best way to have somebody come forward, is to encourage them. Representation of the less engaged neighborhoods is just part of this whole thing. Having a board means that if you have a neighborhood that isn't putting someone forward, you're covered by the adjacent neighborhoods. Executive board term length, neighborhood chairs had mentioned that it often takes a few years to kind of get your feet under you and know what you're doing. So we're looking at 4 years. And of course, at the beginning of the program, we'd stagger that, because I would hate to see everybody being turned over at the same time in 4 years. And then term limits, there's an option in there for an exception to the term limits, because based on need, if there's an empty spot and someone's willing, then the council has that option to keep them on. And then we like the idea that was put forward of having 2 vice chairs to give more leadership opportunity, and also helping those people move forward and potentially being chairs. We've had a lot of comments about the need for training, which is definitely part of this. This is something the committee and the council as a whole has supported. Communications, we're working on a plan that will include email, text messaging, social media, and managed by the council staff, because we have access to some things that we wouldn't be able to hand over to the public, as far as email lists and things. Neighborhood identities, we still want to encourage neighborhoods to embrace that amazing identity that they have, and they still can organize efforts on their own, and they often do. Maybe some people aren't aware, but I've been in neighborhoods where small groups have organized about a particular issue and has nothing to do with the neighborhood program as an official thing. Just it's people very concerned about a particular issue. And then today, during the work meeting, the council discussed some things that had been suggested. One was incentives for volunteering. Another was frequency of meetings, whether to meet monthly, every 2 months. The goal is to be able to set a calendar at the beginning of the meeting, at the beginning of the year. That way, you know, some neighborhood chairs were great about doing that at the beginning of each year, and you could put it on your fridge and you knew when your meetings were coming up. And we can always adjust the frequency later as needed. District size, like I said, 6 to 8 neighborhoods per district. And there have been some opinions coming forward on whether it should be larger, smaller, just different in general. And then one thing I wanted to mention, I keep forgetting to mention, is that the committee has always intended to review this program in a year or sooner if needed to make adjustments. We know this is not always perfect out of the gate, and so it's better to adjust as you go. But some of these things, like the frequency of meetings, you may not know until you hit the ground running. So those are the basics.
Thank you, Karen. Before you sit down, can we go back a couple slides to where the feedback started? Recommendations. There we go. So I guess because there might be comments about some of these specific items. So I'm thinking I'll let them know. Well, what I'd like to say is we did unofficially, I guess, agree as a council that we want to take a look at or include the ability for residents to provide feedback and know who is being considered for the board positions, the executive board positions. So basically, it's not done behind closed doors where the council's choosing this group of individuals. So information about applicants will be posted, and there will be an opportunity to provide feedback. Yes, we can encourage the neighborhoods. If a neighborhood still wants to hold a neighborhood chair election, that isn't necessarily sanctioned by the council, but they can still hold that election, then they can then submit that person to be considered for the board. And of course, the council is going to take that into consideration. We are going to extend the executive, well, again, this was all kind of agreed to conditionally by the council. Hey, we support this, but extend the executive board term to 4 years. And then allowing 2 vice chairs. We actually didn't get to this part of the discussion, so we'll need to discuss that. I know there's decent support in the council for that, but you'll be able to hear that discussion. Okay, next slide, please. You've covered these. Let's go to the next one. There won't be any sort of official incentive for volunteers, at least not right now. What we're going to do is figure out how to encourage people and incentivize people to get engaged and volunteer. And but we tossed around ideas like, oh, could we give somebody rec passes? And we have so many boards in the city that it was one of those things where it was kind of like, if you do it for one, how do you not do it for the others? But what we definitely want to do is, the spirit of this is how do we encourage more people to participate? And so we do want to find ways to do that. And so it won't be codified in the in the code, but in the ordinance, but we are going to try to figure out ways to encourage more participation. We did determine that 2 meetings, or a meeting every other month. That was actually, feedback that we were pretty firm on, like, well, we want a meeting every month, so it's consistent. But we basically got feedback that that's just maybe too much for certain, for these people that participate. So we did say, yeah, okay, we'll go every other month, but there might be some neighborhoods like on the west side where they have land use and zoning stuff that comes up regularly, where we might still need to meet every month. So we'll kind of take this on a neighborhood by neighborhood basis, but most neighborhoods will meet every other month. So it's not as much of a burden, and that's great. That's fine. And we decided to stick with 5 districts for right now. So I just wanted to kind of update you that we've taken a lot of your feedback and incorporated that, and it will be incorporated into the next draft. And as a council, we've agreed to accept these changes. Was there another slide for discussion? Okay.
No, that was it.
And then I also want to say, before we get to the public comment portion, we really value the neighborhood program and appreciate the service that so many of you have done, you and the ones listening online, and the ones that aren't even here. And we definitely, we're just trying to make it better, and there's no desire to try to stack the deck, in favor of the council or something. It's not a legislative body. Really, it doesn't do us any good to just have a bunch of people who are only doing the will of the council, right? The purpose of the neighborhood program is to be, to give us more feedback from the neighborhoods, but also then to enable you all to serve your neighborhoods better. So we definitely value the neighborhood program, trying to just make it better, allow for more participation, to alleviate some of these challenges that Karen had talked about. But I guess what I'm saying is thank you for your participation and for your service. And we appreciate the program. We appreciate you. Okay, so at this point, let's get to, are there any questions for Karen? Bill, I know I cut you off at the last meeting. You're going to be the first one to comment when we get back to the discussion. So we will now open this item up for public comment. So this is an opportunity for anyone who wants to share their 2 cents on the neighborhood program, or provide feedback to our draft, or our proposed changes. I know we got a lot of emails from some of you, but you're of course welcome to come up and and share your thoughts as well. So we'll open this up for public comment, both online and in person, and feel free to come on up.
My name is David Wright. I'm the Rock Canyon Neighborhood Chair, and I appreciate all the work that you do. Travis, I especially appreciate your kind words. They don't seem to resonate very well, though, after listening to John Magnus' presentation. He said that there's a 70% failure rate. He quantified it. I would like to see the details of that 70% failure rate and see what the goals of the council are, so that.
Yeah, you can't throw a stat at a numbers guy and not expect you to back it up, right?
Yeah, we want to see. And he also said the neighborhood chairs were bullies and neighborhood chairs were divisive. Well, the issues are divisive sometimes, but I'm not sure the neighborhood chairs are divisive. I want to see examples of what you mean by divisive and bullies. And the thing that concerns me about appointing members of the neighborhood council is appointed committees tend to attract people who have agendas. They're often hidden, but after they get in, the agendas become clear, and all it takes is one or two people who are not cooperative, and it's hard to move forward. I just think that it's best to keep it the way it is. I'd really like to see why you want to change. Most of my neighbors feel that you're trying to control things. John Magnus said you wanted to control the meetings and the agendas. If you control the meetings and the agendas, this doesn't represent the neighborhoods at all. So I think that's a mistake. I appreciate your comment that we can continue to have elections, and maybe we'll push those names forward to be on the neighborhood council, but maybe we'll just continue to operate as a neighborhood the way we're operating now. I think we're capable of conducting our own elections or banding together with other neighborhoods and helping each other conduct elections. The frequency of meetings seems way high. In my neighborhood, a neighborhood meeting every 2 or 3 years seems appropriate. When we have issues that need to be discussed, like a new development, we get together and have a presentation. But most of the time, through email messages, we communicate with each other. And in most cases, as you know, most people don't have strong opinions, but the ones who do want to be listened to. And I think that that's what's important. Neighborhood chairs have no power other than to organize and persuade. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. I don't want to interrupt the flow of the public comment, but Karen, once public comment is done, I'd love for you to talk about Councilor McKay suggested we talk about agendas, what the, well, we'll cover it. We'll come back to it.
Well, I come from your Jeff Hammond, Rock Canyon neighborhood, Mr. Wright's neighborhood. So speaking, I think this is great. And I know neighbors around me think it's great. So I don't know who Mr. Wright, sorry, not Brother Wright, Mr. Wright has been talking to in my neighborhood. Many of us feel like we don't know what's going on. We don't get emails. I wasn't on the email list. Luckily, he just added me, so now I am. So we're good. I've been getting him forward actually from another neighbor. I was talking to another neighbor and he's like, how do I find out about anything? I think when it's more official, it's every other month. The city's letting people know these meetings are happening. That's where people go, oh, there's a meeting, I can go. And a good example of that was the Tim Few Drive, I think, meeting we had about a month ago. There was a lot of people there. There was a lot of opinions. And the reason I knew about it is because the city was like, hey, we're having this meeting. So I was able to go. It wasn't you were on this email list or something like this. Everyone knew about it. And I think frequency is key. Every 2 to 3 years, I mean, in 2 to 3 years, I almost had a medical degree. There's a lot that goes on in that time. I feel like
every couple months, there's things that are changing. I mean, look at the world, look at things that are going on in the city. I think that this is I think I do see the concerns though of some of the neighbors thinking the council might have an agenda, things like that. I think everyone's always worried about that, regardless of it's the council or the mayor or even neighborhood chairmans. Everyone's always worried about that. And I think getting more people involved, you eliminate that. And I think, like you were saying, it's not sanctioned by the city council, but to do a neighborhood election, I think that's still great to give you, potential people who may want to do it. But I think this is great, and I hope it goes forward. And I really think it will involve more citizens, and will make our city better. So thanks.
Thank you.
Troy Jensen, again, Franklin neighborhood. I am greatly concerned about this. I've been trying to teach my children constitutional principles because they're not taught that in civics. They're not even taught civics anymore in the public education system. This is not following any kind of Republican, Democratic constitutional principles whatsoever. In fact, we're actually teaching my children a civics lesson on this entire process based on how this is being implemented. I'd like to go into it a little bit more, but I am greatly concerned. We have had Terry McCabe was a fantastic neighborhood chair that we had. Tom Allen, a dear friend of mine who I disagreed with vehemently many times, and I served as a co-chair with him. I love and miss both him and Catherine dearly. I also know other chairs, and I've had great disagreements with some of those people, but I completely disagree, and I take umbrage with the idea that this council wants to appoint people. I don't care if the people are on my side. I don't care if you're on my side and you want to appoint people on my side. I take umbrage with the idea, and I want to express that to this council. These need to be kept within the neighborhoods, even if there are 4 people that show up or 400. And I want to express that and share that with you.
Thank you.
My name is Mary Miller. I am currently the Spring Creek Neighborhood Chair and the Southeast Area Rep. And I will confess to you right now, I'm on the verge of tears. You can't reach all the people with a program. My neighborhood alone, people felt like they had no voice until I told them they did. They came out. They wanted to say what went on in their life, in their neighborhoods. They wanted a say. To use words I've heard here tonight, to be fair to all of the residents, this is not. I appreciate all the work that you've put into it, but I also put forth the idea that it still is not complete. You may be on somewhat of a right track in some of the things that have come up that are good, but this will shut out so many people. I cannot tell you how many people I have spoken to in our neighborhood and told them of this event, and they are distressed about it. To be fair to all of our residents, you need to make sure, if this is the path you want to take, that it is fair to all of our residents, including people who speak broken English, including people who don't have necessarily the tech savvy to be involved on a computer or on any of those things. To suggest meetings every 2 months, there are many people still raising children. This is not a reasonable and realistic idea. And I say this right now, I just want to change my hat and say this is Mary Miller. Provo resident rather, for 40 plus years. This is my home. This is the one we chose. And I spent a lot of years raising 12 children to love this city, to love the government process of electing those people who represent us. This is not the way. Because until you have spoken to every resident everywhere, you will not know, you cannot know whether it is fair to all residents. Please be wise. Please, please, please be wise. As you make this decision, I don't believe we're there yet. Please reconsider. This needs a lot more study, and certainly more study than 3 people. I do respect you. I appreciate what you have done in service to this city. I always will. That will not change. Well, if that isn't enough, I think I understand you want me to sit down again. I got that loud and clear. But again, thank you, and thank you for allowing us to speak tonight.
Just so everyone knows, we usually do have like a little bell that goes off when your time is up. It's usually not like that, but
we need
Thank
one
you,
in
Mary.
every pulpit in every church. We used to have one in our ward, and the new stake president took
I think
over.
we need one at
I
every.
think he was from the city council. He got rid of him.
I was going to say we need one at each microphone here on the
go.
council dais.
I'm Warner Woodworth. I've been teaching at the Marriott School for a long time. And I've consulted with cities from Honolulu to New York and Detroit to St. Petersburg, Florida. Even though most of my work is not with governments. And as I read through all the documentation I received from wonderful officials from outside my neighborhood, as well as my own neighborhood group, 2 things came to mind. First was my question. Is this a solution in search of a problem? Is that why we're doing this? And the second question was not much of a question. It was from Paul Dunn. Brother Dunn was a funny guy. He sometimes said insightful things. One of them was this. He said, sometimes as I watch our people in Utah, it seems like we want to help in the worst way, and that's exactly what we do. And that's kind of what I think about this process here. Why do we want to diminish democracy in our sweet little lovely pioneering community and have more bureaucracy and have more control and more top-down stuff in the name of efficiency? That's what I do not quite understand, I guess. And maybe I'm wrong, but I see lots of other cities around the globe, not just America, but around the world. They're highly engaged in citizen involvement, and they do consulting, and they do planning, and they mobilize people, and they train community leaders. And maybe you guys do this, maybe not you, but previous regimes, previous city councils, previous mayors. I just have never seen much of that. I've been blessed. My wife and I have raised 10 kids here, plus 6 others that lived with us while going to college. And we've enjoyed our experience here. The quality of life is great, but it could be so much better. And I don't see us working very effectively at moving in that direction. So I know there's future opportunities to discuss this more, but I just want to make a plea today. Have you done your research? Have you looked at those other options globally, throughout Europe, throughout parts of Africa and Latin America, as well as across the country? And one of the main drivers that has made me more concerned about this than before, where's the big sound coming? Did I finish? I was waiting to be blown away here.
We got such a bad reaction on the last one.
Okay, so thank you. Now I forgot what I was saying, but essentially, I'm just wondering if there could be some research that would help foster this movement. If it's the right one, what's the real rationale? Because I've heard so many complaints from people saying we're gonna not have much of a voice. We're not gonna have the power we used to have. I want to thank you all for your contributions. I especially want to thank the neighborhood chairs since 1974 when I moved into Provo here. Appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Hello, councilors. My name's Sharon Mehmet. I live in the Edgemont area. You spoke in a work session of possible incentives. I know you straw polled not to pursue that line of thought, but I bring it up as a point of reference. That for me, the main incentive for being willing to spend the time and energy it takes to be a neighborhood vice chair has always been to feel like I was making a difference. Listening to many meetings involving different issues in the city, so when my neighbors ask, I can explain why certain decisions were made and what other neighbors can do to get involved if they would like to see a change. Part of feeling like I'm doing well at what I'm doing is again listening to your meetings and hearing reference made to the comments that have been brought up. Maybe this is a leadership training issue. I think Councilors Fillmore and McKay specifically, I heard comments made about what I had written in work session today that I know were brought forth in various emails in the past couple of weeks. Another part of feeling like I'm doing well at this or empowered, as Councilor McKay mentioned, is knowing that my neighbors have chosen me to do this work. And I would add that they keep choosing in future elections to continue doing it because they feel I'm doing well. As I go through the efforts I do, it's always with them in mind, not whether or not someone in the city council or city staff will approve of what I'm doing and ask that I be removed. That means I'm working for you, not my neighbors. I disagree with the comments made during work session that appointments prevents the bullying or the absentee leadership that sometimes occurs presently. I feel, as Councilor McKay mentioned, that the regularity of the meetings being scheduled and supported by neighborhood coordinator will go much further towards improving those problems. If this whole thing is an experiment to see how much better it can work than what we currently have, let's give it a try with the elections process intact. I love the idea of regular meetings with an agenda. I also love the mention of Zoom, but there's no mention in the code as to incorporating remote meeting attendees in meetings or how to verify those attending remotely or in person are actually part of the neighborhood for the purposes of voting. No mention is made of using ballots or any other device that would allow those votes to be considered legal or binding. But reference is made that those votes are what will be used to represent the city council to the official position of a district. Why can't elections for the respective neighborhood chairs then be held in the same way at the same time and be considered just as binding? Thanks for your time. Please consider keeping elections for neighborhood chairs as you move forward with the improvements that you're trying to make to the neighborhood program.
Thank you.
I guess I'll go next. Becky Bogdan, Provo resident, I guess. Anyway, when asked what is a neighborhood chair, I always kind of jokingly say, well, I'm like a PTA president. I don't get paid. I'm elected and I have no power. But yet it's something that we do often. We elect a PTA president. We also hold elections for community council at our schools. And that is also a process of who can ever get the most people to go into the office and vote for you gets the job. And a lot of times that is something that the principal has to approach one of his faithful PTA members to go ahead and put their name, put their hat in the ring for that. This is a process that isn't an official ballot, but yet is something that we do. Why do we do that? Here at this neighborhood level, this is something that has been done for a long time. And it does help the residents feel in control of who represents them. I agree that there is so much more we could do is getting out to the different residents. I know I have exhausted my resources, and so having the city aid with that, even if we don't have those emails directly, that's amazing. That is an amazing point to part of this, right? There are some good aspects, but I really do have a lot of concerns. And I'm probably sure once I have a chance to sit down and watch work meeting, I'll send you all another 1,000 more emails because that's what I do. But I do appreciate your time and I do appreciate your passion for trying to make a better program. I just think that the direction that this is going right here is the wrong direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Becky. I was going to say, Dave, you didn't come and sit through 3 hours of meetings just to sit there, did you?
Almost. Dave Connect. Now, I've sent you a lot of emails, but I was aware that Kim Santiago sent something and her communication was that she wanted it read into the record.
Yeah, we've got a couple of emails that Councilor McKay has decided during the discussion portion she'll be reading on behalf of those. So just so you all know, there's no actual like policy that states we have, that we read emails in during the public comment, but we typically do just because, we want people to participate. And if they can't participate remotely and they want it shared, then we'll read it. Kim's was 3.5 minutes, so it's a little bit long. Maybe Catrice can summarize it, but she's welcome to take her time to do that. But yeah, we've got a couple that we're going to read that we will, not right now, but we will.
Okay, so I did have one comment just about the Zoom meetings or online participation, which has become quite popular. We can probably thank COVID for that. And someone said, well, if you're taking a poll or a vote and you don't know if the person online is legitimately in the neighborhood, I guess that's a problem. I'm not sure how to, verify that. If it's Melanie McCord, you know where she's coming from, but if it's some unfamiliar face, so there could be a little problem with that aspect of the online participation.
Yeah, so those are some of the nuances we're going to figure out. It won't be codified, but we have talked a little bit about how we might verify people and such, but yeah.
Great. Thanks.
Good feedback. Thanks, Dave.
Jonathan Hill, Fort Utah Chair, Provo resident. In 2017, Ammon Hill, I know who to blame, dragged me to a neighborhood meeting. At that meeting, it turned out it was an election night for a new neighborhood chair. And basically I lost at the game, not it. Last person to say no. But it's been a good experience. And I do think, as I've thought about it, first of all, I think it's good to give what I call reinforcing feedback as well as corrective feedback. I tell my students all the time, if you don't give both kinds, if you don't give reinforcing feedback, you lose the good stuff, right? And if you don't give corrective feedback, you can't make it better. And so I think with this, there's a lot of good things that are being done. Personally, I think it's a very interesting model to have these district meetings. I think it's worth a try to see how they work. I think there's pros and cons to them. They are bigger. Someone at our neighborhood chair meeting mentioned that, that might be intimidating for some people and the formality might be intimidating. But I think it's worth a try and may give some resilience to the program when a neighborhood doesn't have a chair, for example. I really like the regularly scheduled meetings. I agree. We're going to have to experiment on how often to have these. Sometimes I feel like, in my neighborhood, people don't want a lot of meetings because they feel like they need to go and then they burn out. But at the same time, one of the most important things that I think a neighborhood meeting does is allows us to give feedback and to review potential developments. I found that very empowering for the residents and really helps them feel ownership of their neighborhood and a chance to help make it a good place to live. And so maybe, I don't know, maybe it is rare except when a developer calls one, right? Something like that. But I think that can be worked out in time. I like the combination meeting. Some people hate Zoom. Some people hate going to a meeting. Now we give both a chance. On a note there, in one neighborhood meeting I did where I took a vote, And I wanted to make sure to separate the residents from the non-residents. On a Zoom poll, at least, you can just ask, do you live in the neighborhood or not? And you can actually link those two answers together. So you can separate that out and at least get, some verbal confirmation that someone's claiming to live in the neighborhood, at least. And I like the idea of recordings and minutes for those who cannot attend and help them feel like they're involved. So those kinds of things I think are great. I think the one issue that still remains, and what we've heard from most of the people here, is the idea of appointed versus elected. And so I think that does deserve more discussion and more thought. I really appreciate you guys including the suggestion that I made at neighborhood meeting to at least make that transparent, right? So it's out there and we have a chance to know who's applying and give feedback on that, because that I think will help a lot of the ideas of cronyism and those kinds of potential conflicts that may appear even if they're not intended. However, the more I've thought about it, the more I've thought about how much it means to me to know that I was elected by my neighbors, even if it wasn't a huge meeting, and how much that's made my perspective that I represent my neighbors to the council, not that I represent the council to my neighbors. And so I think there does need to be continued discussion on how can we do that. I also think, as I've thought about it more and more, a lot of the issues we've had with the elections are not actually solved by appointments. For me, for example, the reason why I gave my own election at the beginning is because I wouldn't have applied, right? We probably would have had no applications from my neighborhood. But because I was there and my neighbors kind of nominated me and I got elected, we got somebody, right? And so I don't know if appointing gets a neighborhood chair when an election would not. So anyway, thank you.
Jonathan, we're out of time, but one thing I want to discuss with the council is why couldn't you still hold that election? You can. And then your neighborhood says, hey, this is who we chose, and then we appoint you. Does that make sense? You can still have that election.
Yeah, so I guess,
but it's not
and this is great. I love when it's a discussion, right? Not just a one-way thing. So thank you for asking that.
But I just bring it up because it keeps coming up, but there's no reason you all couldn't still hold your election. Like there was an example of the PTA given. The PTA isn't sanctioned by the school district, right? It's its own entity. They choose their own representatives, and then those people can go on to be influential or run for school board or something like that, or assert their influence, or
right.
Especially if they have funding. But I think the issue is that we're sanctioning an election that really doesn't feel like a legitimate election in most cases, right? So we can't legitimize something we can't put our stamp of approval on something that's not necessarily legitimate. So you all do that, bring it to the council to say, hey, here's who we chose.
Yeah, I think
so.
I think that could be a model, but who's going to organize that, right? Would it be
the same people do it now? You think David Wright's not going to be involved? Heck no, he's going to be involved, right?
Well, yeah, but when I was elected, my neighborhood had no neighborhood chair at the time, and I don't.
So you're saying the defunct ones are gonna stay defunct?
Yes.
Or get more defunct?
Right, because they'd have to organize and do that. I think there should be a lot of thought and discussion about this, right? It's not something that there's a clear, bright line. Here's the answer. Personally, I think when in doubt, the error needs to be, as I think someone else mentioned, on, well, if you didn't show up to elect your neighborhood chair, it's kind of on you, right? Whereas I still have a concern that you may have someone with an agenda who comes and applies, and they're the only applicant. So what's the council going to do?
But you could have that at any election as well. I mean, I've literally been to a neighborhood election that was like 3 people. And they're like, well,
okay, so
I'm supposed to step down. I've been doing this, but I guess I'll just keep doing it, So.
Yeah, and so let's look at those two situations where we have a council appointed person who was the only applicant and came with an agenda or a special interest that they wanted to do, and one where people didn't show up to the meeting and someone got in there, right? In that case, I think it's still better to be able to go to the neighborhood and say, well, next time you need to come and elect someone, right? Whereas the neighborhood's going to feel like the council chose someone because they liked them or potential conflict of interest or something, you know what I mean? And so I think since both situations are bad, the less bad is to put it on the people directly. Neither situation is good, though.
Sure. All right. Well, I kind of co-opted the public comment, so I think that's what Brian was about to tell me.
Well, actually, I was going to co-opt it more and just say, I think the interesting thing about this conversation is one difference I see between those two scenarios is that the council's appointment happens in a public meeting where the entire neighborhood could show up to it if they wanted to.
Well, the other one does too, right? At a public meeting that everybody could show up on. So anyway, I think discussion needs to be had. I think it's clear.
So, okay.
I think for now, what is clear from the public comment is that the biggest concern seems to be the appointment versus election, right? I think that's what's clear at this point.
Thank you, Jonathan.
So, thank you.
I took it over, but we're back to public comment. I just always enjoy a good discourse with Jonathan, right? I think, has everybody, we got a
have
couple
one
more
online.
faces. Oh, we got one online. All right. Melanie McCord, go ahead. You're up.
You need to throw some money at this. When I was neighborhood chair, we had an election and 300 neighborhood people showed up. But that's because I applied for a $500 grant from the neighborhood program and leafleted the entire neighborhood. I hired little scouts to run the things. We contacted the PTA, we contacted the stake public relations officer. I mean, we really put it out there. I was willing to do that, but not every neighborhood chair is willing to do that. And that means that you need more staff. Our neighborhood program was copied by a young intern who worked for us, and she went to work for Sandy City. And she built a very successful neighborhood program in Sandy with 6 people. She had one full-time coordinator, 2 part-time, and 3 interns. And that's what it took to build the program. And I don't think that you guys have been fair to Karen for years, asking her to do this on her own. And I also have some real concerns. I sent you an email about some of the concerns that John Magnus, some of the things that John Magnus said are just erroneous. So decide, if you want to really empower this, then you got to throw some money on it.
Thank you, Melanie. Additional public comment?
My name is Boyd Mehmet. I live in Edgemont neighborhood. I typically don't like to come and comment. When I come to these meetings, I prefer to listen, but my wife is very, very interested and vested in the process, and I can attest that she does listen to a lot of meetings on her computer at home. Anyway, my comment really is democracy really is an experiment. And every day that experiment is put to the test. And do we hand our rights over to government and allow government to enforce those rights the way they want, or do we maintain those rights locally to ourselves? My concern is that in the appointment scenario, it's just another insulator between you and the people. And it makes it more difficult for the people to voice their opinion. I think, yes, there are some people who do not know how to behave civilly in public meetings, and that's unfortunate, but that's part of what democracy is we have to learn to deal with these situations, and adding insulators and adding barriers for the sake of progress, it can become somewhat of a problem, in my opinion. So I applaud you for looking at avenues and wanting to enrich Provo's communities, Provo's lifestyle, and improving your lives as well. I don't see a problem with that at all. But I do think that it is best that rather than the appointments be or the process be given by appointment, that the process is given by voice of the people. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Additional public comment? I knew if I stared at you too long enough, one of you would come up.
Well, I kind of figured I was the last person who hadn't come up, but I guess there's somebody else, so I didn't need to. My name is Zach Green. I live in Joaquin neighborhood. I am not a neighborhood chair. I've been to several neighborhood meetings. I enjoy them. I think they're fun, but I'm not somebody that's kind of ingratiated in the process right now. I just wanted to come up and, after watching the presentation and listening to what a lot of people have said, and correct me if I'm wrong, Councilman Hogan, but it seems like the thing that the city council is trying to do is make sure that the leaders of these neighborhood organizations are legitimate, right? Like if you have like 3 people show up, it doesn't seem like a legitimate process, right? And then the people down here, from what I'm hearing, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like the challenge is that they're like, well, if you just have the city council appoint somebody to that position, then you end up with a situation where they're like, well, they weren't really chosen. And if you still only have 3 people involved in the process of the neighborhood, it's not actually changing the situation, because it seems like the council really does want to improve and increase public input through the neighborhood program so that they can get a better feel for what the public wants. And if all those things are the case, I think that a lot of the things up here are great ideas that I've been hearing. But if that's the case, it seems like if there were to be an appointment, the appointed person should probably just have the job of making sure we're increasing the number of people that are attending meetings and the number of people that are actually voting on those elections. Like if you had a quorum requirement, essentially, where it's like, hey, you have to have 50 people at this meeting for it to be considered valid, it seems like that would do more and make people happier and feel like they're more involved in the process than if you have the strict appointment by the council. So those are my thoughts.
I like the ideas. Thank you. It's on to you. You've put it off as long as possible.
Oh, I liked your idea a lot, by the way. I guess I want to talk about a model. And that is when Catrice came to our neighborhood for the first neighborhood meeting, to meet her. Most of us did not know her. But she did lay out an agenda, things she wanted to do, things she thought were important to be done, things that she believed. There were people in the room who said, Catrice, I see it this way. And maybe you ought to maybe consider doing it this way instead of that way. And it was such a back and forth. And she remained absolutely calm and direct through the whole thing. And so did the audience, because it was such an open discussion. And for that reason, and she's continued to be that way, which is why she has such strong support in our neighborhood. The one thing that I was thinking of that you could see me thinking about, you good in that job, aren't you? Is that, right now, I understand that the school board does not take input at public meetings unless the person who has come is speaking directly to what they have put on the agenda, which is a real concern to me for any politically active group, because that means you may not be getting then what other serious things are going on in the brush. You're only seeing the trees. And I've appreciated your openness to this meeting tonight. But I'd also, really recommend that you stay that open, both in what we're doing with the neighborhood meetings. Again, it's a seriousness of the appointment issue.
you will lose support. You will lose support with that idea. And I hope you continue to talk about it and listen to what has been said, and continue to be the kind of open body that you are. And I appreciate you for that openness, because I feel like tonight you have heard, basically the discussion has been on this subject of changing the neighborhood chair issue, and how that goes. But I've seen you listen to other ideas as well. I think that's the way government ought to run in America. And I really appreciate you for it. And thank you again, Catrice, we think you're a model as being an elected official, and we appreciate that. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
I didn't catch her name and neighborhood.
Oh, yeah. You had one thing to do. And
My name is Carolyn Wright, and I live in Provo.
relation to David Wright?
Yes.
Just making a guess.
Okay. And I voted for Catrice.
All right. I think we got everyone. Okay, we'll go ahead and close public comment. I want to thank you all for, well, no, that's technically not part of the public comment, but I'll let you do that. One sec. And I want to thank you all for being here and participating. Catrice McKay, we're going to bring it back to the council now for a discussion. Catrice McKay has offered to read 2 letters that were sent in from residents regarding the program. And then I still owe Bill his open mic because we cut him off in the earlier meeting. So basically, we're going to bring it back to the council for a discussion, but go ahead, Catrice.
Okay, Rachel's going to read one and I'm going to read one. All right. Okay, this one is from Kim Santiago. She talks about the appointment. This section that refers to the council taking the responsibility from the citizens to elect their representation is the most problematic because it takes away the fundamental rights of citizens. This also makes the executive board beholden to the council instead of the citizens. How is a neighborhood chair supposed to represent the views of the neighborhood if they are in conflict with what the council wants? If the council can remove the chair, then are they really going to feel free to represent their neighborhood, or are they going to tell the council what they want to hear so they can keep their job? Think of it this way. What if the state legislature provided citizens with a small list of people who would be elected as council members for the various cities? Would you be on that list? If so, would you as a council member be more inclined to do what your constituents want or what the state legislature wanted? In regards to terms, the one-year term limit is problematic because it takes time to be comfortable with this role as chair. Some chairs may just get their feet under them at the first year and really understand how to perform their role only to be released from their duties. If the neighborhood really likes, do you know what? We're going to change that one. So I'm not even going to read that one because she's over her 2-minute limit. So we'll skip that. Lastly, there's apathy. I don't know if you've received any adequate citizen response on this issue. Frankly, I'm not interested enough to read the draft proposal until it was brought to my attention. Citizens are tired of trying to be heard, and some have given up because they don't think it will make a difference anyway. Others may not know what this change will affect them until it's too late. I've been told that there are complaints in neighborhoods of improper noticing. If there are issues with noticing and making sure all neighbors are informed, then send out individual notices from the council. Take that responsibility on yourselves. If there are chairs who don't perform their job correctly, teach them the correct way. If they continue to fall short of their duties or bully others, inform the neighborhood and hold other elections. The neighborhood can replace them if they want to. I have been told that one of the reasons for the proposed changes in policies because neighborhood chairs shouldn't represent the voice of the neighborhood, that members of the neighborhood can represent themselves. Citizens can voice their concerns individually, but historically it made sense to have a meeting where all interested neighbors can attend, give their input, and have the chair who they elected share the results of the meeting with the council. If this is not going to be the case anymore, then why have an election for a chair? This is confusing to me. On our national, state, municipal level, citizens' rights are being eked away by government. Some subtle changes to our current laws have placed strap by strap, so nobody notices until they've absolutely tied the hands of the citizen. I hope you will consider this in any changes that you make. Are you making laws based on the personalities that you'd rather not have to deal with now instead of what is the right of the future of our community? Are you purposely taking away rights of citizens to choose their own representation? Are you furthering the deep divide between the people and the trust in government? I hope you will consider these things and make necessary adjustments to the current proposal that protect the rights of the citizens you are under oath to represent. I appreciate your efforts and believe you ultimately desires are to make the program more effective. I hope you will consider some of these concerns as you make these changes.
The one I'm reading is mostly a series of questions, and these are from Susan and David Keller in the Joaquin neighborhood. Because we will be unable to attend the council meeting this evening, we request that the following be read and included in the record of the council meeting regarding the proposed neighborhood district program. 1. Will neighborhood residents be able to recommend individuals to be considered by the municipal council for appointment to the neighborhood district executive board, as will BYU and the Downtown Alliance? 2. Will the exclusion of persons elected or appointed to public office from concurrent service on the neighborhood district executive board include individuals elected or appointed to political party positions, including precinct officers, legislative district officers, county officers, and state party officers? 3. Will neighborhood boundaries be mapped to 2023 city council districts? Will all of the current Joaquin neighborhood be in one city council district, etc.? 4. Will the proposed neighborhood districts align with the community-oriented policing assignments? 5. Does the proposed neighborhood district program provide the residents of a single neighborhood to meet to discuss the specific neighborhood issues and activities? 6. How will request for rezoning, conditional use permitting, and other land use matters be processed to allow neighborhood review and recommendations? A. Meetings of the neighborhood district executive board. B. Meetings in the specific neighborhoods. C. Meetings including immediately adjacent neighborhoods if the proposed land use action is on the border between them. D. Joint meetings of neighborhood district executive boards when the proposed land use action borders 2 or more neighborhoods in 2 neighborhood council districts. Example, land use items on 9th East affecting both Joaquin and Foothill neighborhoods. E, meetings of neighbors residing within a specified distance of the land use proposal. 7, how widely will meetings for land use proposals be noticed? A, neighbors residing within a specified distance of the land use proposal. B, neighborhoods affected by a land use proposal. C, neighborhood districts affected by a land use proposal. We believe these issues should be studied and clearly delineated before taking action on this proposal. Thank you for your consideration. Susan and David Keller, Joaquin.
Thank you, council members. Bill Fillmore, you had a few comments or questions you wanted to discuss in the meeting earlier today. So we'll start off with you.
Has my moment finally arrived?
It has arrived.
Okay. I want to say that all the comments we've received tonight are very much welcome and very helpful. We thank you for that. I've not been a member of the committee that has worked so assiduously on this proposal, but I appreciate their efforts. There are problems that we're trying to address. One problem in particular, and maybe in response to Werner's rhetorical question, is this a solution in search of a problem? The problem is underrepresentation. If every neighborhood chair was a David or a Dave or a Mary or Sharon or Becky, Jonathan, we'd be in great shape. We would love that. I mean, the essence of the neighborhood program is not to set up a quasi-governmental structure. The essence of the neighborhood program is for the free flow of information, for you to be able to share with us your concerns, your perspectives, your priorities, and for us to send information your way that we feel is valuable. That's really what it's all about. And there are some neighborhoods that are terribly underrepresented, some totally not represented. And we're just trying to plug the gap there a little bit. But like I say, if we could have great neighborhood chairs like some of you have spoken tonight, we'd be absolutely delighted. So that's, I mean, there are a variety of secondary issues that this proposal tries to address, but that's the heart of it. And so this morning in our work session, I raised the very issue that most of you have been speaking about, and that is the question of elections versus appointment. And I think that it would be fair to say that if we could be assured as a council that every election would generate a quality neighborhood chair, somebody who's committed. I'm not talking about their opinions or their political preferences, but just somebody who's committed and who wants to hear from their constituents, so to speak, and speak truth to the council, that would be great. But unfortunately, we have a lot of districts where maybe 3 or 4 people show up, and the loser is elected neighborhood chair, and then they go on to be AWOL for the next 2 years, and that doesn't serve their neighborhood well at all. And so we're just trying to make the program more effective than it has been. And occasionally we do get somebody who gets elected by a small number of people and ends up purporting to represent the views of his or her district, a neighborhood, but really it's their own personal agenda. And they really abuse that position to push their own agenda. They're not representing their neighborhood well. So if we could find a way to have what I'd call, for lack of a better word, legitimate neighborhood elections, that we would love that. It's just that historically, we haven't done a really good job on that, except when it comes to people like yourselves who've showed up tonight to defend the neighborhood program the way it is, because it runs pretty well under you. So this morning, this afternoon, actually, I recommended that we do one of 2 things. Either we take a leap of faith and try this program and give as an experiment for a year or 2 and see if it works. If it doesn't, we retool it. But the alternative I would prefer, and I don't know quite how this would work out in terms of details, but the idea would be that we go ahead and have neighborhood elections, and that we support you from a city perspective in terms of helping you call the meeting. And Catrice has talked a lot about the necessity of good communications, that we help you hold a good meeting, and that we help you structure an election that people would have more confidence in, and create some legitimacy around that election. Maybe there's some minimum requirements that so many people have to show up. A quorum has been mentioned. Maybe we have the chairman who's elected certify that certain things happen at that election. But if they don't reach those minimum requirements to be what we somehow have to define as a legitimate neighborhood election, that then the council would have to step in. But we would prefer I would prefer a legitimate election. I shouldn't speak for everybody, but I think there's a consensus that if we could just be assured that we had really a workable election protocol, regardless of who gets elected, just that's legitimate, and that somebody who's going to be really engaged and represent their neighborhood well, regardless of what opinion may come out of the neighborhood, we'd be delighted. So, I mean, that's really what we're kind of hoping for. I want to disavow or not disavow, but try to persuade you that the council has no agenda. We're not trying to force our views on the neighborhoods. We don't have any preconditioned concepts or programs or whatever that we want to try to push on you. We're just trying to set up neighborhood programs, a neighborhood program that will work well in terms of a nice, even flow of information. And if elections can do that, that would be great in my mind. So just that's my 2 cents today for what it's worth. This is a work in progress, and nothing is in stone. And so we welcome your comments. This is going to take some more time. We welcome further comments. And if any of you have ideas along the lines I'm suggesting, how we could make elections more effective and more representative, certainly welcome that.
Thank you, Councilor Fillmore. So I usually let everybody else go first, but I wanted to, my comments kind of piggyback off of Bill's. So sorry, George, hang tight. So I think there's a misunderstanding, and I totally appreciate this gentleman, Jeff, what was it in the back? Troy, I'm sorry, Troy. Troy, and the respect for democracy and such. However, it doesn't apply in this situation because the neighborhood program was never intended to be an elected or governing body. Well,
please don't engage from the audience. if there's need be, you can be invited to come back to the microphone.
So I think it's important to recognize that the purpose of the neighborhood program is to improve communication between the neighborhoods and the city, and to help us enable you all to accomplish things within your neighborhood, and for us to inform you all, and vice versa. The purpose of the neighborhood program is not to be an elected or governing body, or a legislative or governing body, and thus elections don't really apply and aren't really necessary. In my mind, because I've gone back and forth on this, why does the election thing, it's not working for me in my mind? And it's because it's not helping us accomplish the ultimate purpose of the neighborhood program. And that's why appointed representatives.
Sir, you were not interrupted during your comments. Don't interrupt during the chair's comments. No, interrupting from the audience is out of order, and you'll be asked to leave if you don't stop. No, you weren't, because you don't have the floor.
So I'll just finish my comment real quick. The purpose of the neighborhood program is to facilitate communication back and forth between the neighborhoods and the council, and for us to, and also empower and enable you all to accomplish things within your neighborhoods, service projects, things like that. So thus, an election is not necessary, electing neighborhood chairs. And if appointments work better to accomplish that purpose, then appointments is the way I want to go. Right now, in most cases, in many cases, the elections are not helping us to really accomplish that purpose. And I feel appointments will do a better job. That being said, the election that you all will still have in your neighborhoods the ability to have elections. We're not removing democracy in any way. Ultimately, if this program didn't exist today and we were coming to the neighborhoods and saying, we're going to start a program where you all have the ability to have more formal communication and provide better feedback, and we support you, I think most people would be like, this is awesome. But because we're moving from an elected form to an appointed form, you all feel like something's being taken away. Whereas I feel like personally, we're adding to it because we're going to accomplish what the purpose of the program is in my mind. So I'm just sharing my 2 cents. I'm not representing the council here in any way, but that's why me personally, I appreciate the comments that are made about democracy and such. But in this case, it's, to me, that's not the purpose of this neighborhood program. And thus why I'm comfortable using an appointed process as opposed to an elected process. So I felt like that kind of piggybacked off of what Bill was saying. So that's why I jumped in and interjected. Usually I don't do that. We'll move to George. Go ahead, George Hanley.
Travis, thanks. And thank you to both you and to Councilor Fillmore for your thoughtful comments. I actually think they resonated quite a bit with me. I do think, I mean, I'm aware of the hour, so I hope we can move along here efficiently. But I do want to say just a few things to build on what's been said. First of all, it's very, very hard for me to hear the pain and frustration of our neighborhood chairs who've given so much to our city. I personally feel very similar to Mr. Fillmore and Mr. Hoban about the problem is real, and there is a problem we're trying to solve. But it breaks my heart to think that this communicates to anyone that we don't respect or aren't grateful for the service that people have given under the previous program, and nothing could be farther from the truth. I think ultimately, I've often felt badly for neighborhood chairs who give so much, who are accused of misusing their office because somebody feels like the election wasn't legitimate, or somebody feels like they don't have an opportunity to speak up, or they don't feel like they're ever going to have another chair. And so oftentimes neighborhood chairs seem to me to be criticized in ways that are unfair. And I think that is generally because we've started to create the impression that this is an official, formal representative branch of the government, which it is not. And so I think to the degree that we've created that impression, we need to correct that. That said, I hope the public can appreciate how difficult that is, because it looks like we're trying to say we don't want democracy. And I actually want more. I want more civic engagement. I want more neighborhoods expressing their voice. I want more people in the neighborhoods more aware of what's going on in the city. And I actually think I can speak on behalf of the entire council that that's what we all want. There's no question that that is a main driver of our concerns. It's just that I don't think there's any way, short of spending a lot of money and saying we're going to now have formal elections in all 34 neighborhoods where we send out ballots and so on, that where we can shore up that election process. And if we are going to do that, then of course we are going to have to consider these people as representatives. But most of the time that I've been in on the city council, I keep reminding people nothing is more powerful than contacting me directly, emailing me, talking to me, reaching out to your elected representatives. That's how our government's set up to work. And I still feel like that is the best way to have your voice heard. But what we often suffer with in the city is that there are issues happening that we can't get the feedback we want because maybe people aren't paying attention or they don't have the information. And that's why this program has so much to offer us. And I'm generally content with the direction of these suggested revisions. I do hope we can find some tweaks here to this issue of appointment so that it feels more, not just feels, but so that there's more direct participation by the neighborhoods in, I don't know, nominating people who should be on it. And then we choose between those nominees or something along those lines so that there's a little more trust there. Cause I can sense that this is a hard sell for people. It's a hard transition. But I just hope people can appreciate that, that there are a lot of people in the city who don't feel represented. They don't feel like they know what's going on. They don't have a chair who's functioning well. And as has been said, and that this is part of what we're trying to address here. I just, when we talk about being fair to all the residents, this is really what I feel like we're trying to accomplish. So I said this earlier, but when, neighborhood chairs are running on positions, I think we've got a problem. That we've politicized even that level of government when it shouldn't be politicized. So hopefully we can correct that.
Additional comments? Councilor McKay.
I want to address two things that came up in questions. Number one, the agenda. The agenda will not be set by the city. Certain things like a development will be put on the agenda by the city, but it will be voted on in the meetings, the agenda, like you'll talk about the meeting before what you want to talk about. So if you don't think it's in there, we'll fix that because it's supposed to be in there, right, Karen?
Actually, that's not what is in the ordinance currently.
Oh, so is that just what we talked about today then?
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's something we need to.
Yeah, I don't know. I was on the committee.
That's different because, yeah, my understanding from our meetings was that the person in charge of the neighborhood program would be setting the agenda, but with input from the neighborhood districts themselves, and then pulling all that together and publishing it. And
right, but the input would come from the neighborhood.
But in essence, it's the staff that would end up
writing it. Yeah.
Publishing that agenda and everything. So, yeah.
But the input comes from the neighborhood.
Right. If there's a particular topic they're looking for, but then the staff would also be putting automatically putting the development items and scheduling if there's room for having your community officer, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. But I even think as far as the educational piece, it's up to the district to figure out what they want to follow, what they're interested in, or what affects their neighborhoods or districts and.
That's certainly one way to do it. I think what was in my head was,
Okay.
you know, like this month, all the meetings will have someone from Provo Power coming or whatever, you know,
Okay.
but it can
We'll
be
tighten
handled
that up.
a bunch of different ways.
The other thing you mentioned was, I can't read my handwriting. Remote people. The people on Zoom can vote. There's, like Shannon and I do legislative stuff where we can vote on Zoom. There's voting features. So we will be utilizing that so that people, is that not on there either, Karen, in the policy?
I don't think it's in the code, but I mean, we've already been doing elections and things that way in the current neighborhood program meetings.
I think the question was around how do you verify people who are online?
Well, it was also
And
that
so-
you vote. It said they're saying it didn't say that you could vote online. So that was a concern. But we want to include the people online and the people in person equally.
The intent is to have
As far as
people online included
Yes.
in voting on things that are pertinent to their
Yes.
neighborhood or
So
whatever.
I think just so people know, we should definitely add that to policy. And then, as far as, I just have to say it again, as far as the election and appointed thing, I think everything we've done in the program is awesome, except for that. I do think it's an improvement. I do think it'll bring more engagement. I think it'll be easier. I think it'll be more organized, easier for staff and residents. I think there's so many wonderful things about it. But I also think all the things we are adding as far as meeting in a particular place, having set times and dates, having Zoom, having minutes, having an agenda, having all these things so transparent and having staff there and having council members there, that we can do an election at these meetings and it's going to be as legit as you can get. It's more legit to me than appointing. We'll have the people there. We'll have them on Zoom. We'll have them in person. And it can all be overseen and it will be organized and it'll all be recorded so people can go back and watch it. And I think it's fine to add a piece if someone can't be there, that they put an appointment in. If everyone there votes for that one appointed person who was on vacation, great. But that just makes more sense to me. I don't know why we wouldn't try that out first. And then if that doesn't work, go straight to appointments. But jumping straight to appointments, it seems harsh and unnecessary when we haven't fixed the communication issue. And with this, we're fixing the communication issue where everyone will be notified. There will be no worry about someone not being notified to the maximum extent we can do. It's not on the shoulder of a neighborhood member or a chair or someone in the community. It's on the shoulders of us, and we can do that. And we can do better because we have the tools through the administration. So I still just have to put my plug in for that.
Additional comments? Debating if I respond to you or not. I think I've already made my point. All right. Well, if there's no additional comments, we'll go ahead and close discussion. And I guess if there's no objection, we will now adjourn the Provo Municipal Council meeting by unanimous consent. Thank you all for being here, participating. We'll hear this at the next meeting as well. And you can get your 2 minutes again.